Hey, welcome, welcome. All right, it does look like my mic's working. I've had problems with OBS disconnecting my things. How's everybody doing tonight? It looks like I have some, I don't know what's going on. CJ, I have not heard from, even though she had previously indicated she would be here. Um, and then Dana was gonna try, but her computer was giving her a problem, and I haven't heard from her in a minute since then. Um, yeah, so I'm not sure what the deal is going on there. It's the universe out to get me again, as per usual, I guess. Um, but whatever. We can still make some stuff work. Oops, I just did a thing I didn't want to do. All right. Um, Sorry, I'm trying to change the category in Twitch. But I think I might, oh yeah. Yeah, I think. All right. Okay, there we go. Everything looks right now. And I think we should be good. Yeah, so I had planned on kind of going over this. There's this huge list of like 150 writing quotes. I figured we'd go over some of them and talk about them. And part of the idea was to be able to, discuss them. And that's hard to do if it's just me. So I guess we're gonna just play it by ear. My elbow itches really bad. It must just be really dry. Yeah, so I don't know. I don't know what's up with the peoples and the things and where's everybody at? What's everybody doing? I had been talking to Dana on Snapchat, but I haven't heard back from her, and I haven't heard from CJ in a few hours. So I don't know what's up. I don't know what happened. CJ could be asleep. She has been known to accidentally sleep late, but usually she has lessons like up until right before stream on Fridays. All right, I'm full disclosure, this is a wine glass full of ice and White Claw. It's probably ridiculous, but it's what I wanted to do, so it's what I did. All right, well, I planned this for an immersive view so that I could plan easier. So I guess what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw myself on this thing because that's the closest one it fits on. And then we will talk about the quizzotes and go over them, and we can discuss them. And if you're here and you will chat with me, that would be fabulous, because otherwise it's just going to be me talking about things that people have said before, which I could really just read them and go, uh-huh. That's a thing they said. They did say that. So, this is my last cigarette till I purchase more. So one of the things you can do though, is down in the description, there should be a link to the actual list. I want to make sure that that is clearly available to everybody. Yep, it's down there. It says check out the site we were using for the quotes. So please do go check that out, because they are the true MVPs here, because they compiled this list. Yeah. And Godzilla 2014 is here. Hello, Kaiju Universe. I am Godzilla 2014. Well, hello, Godzilla. Thank you for being here. All right, let's go ahead and hop into this, and hopefully we will get some visitors. I'm not going to adjust the size, so some of them are going to fit really well, and some of them are going to be a little bit janky, and I'm sorry, but it's just hard. I'm a one-woman show over here altering this stuff. Okay. So number one, I think this is one of the more commonly seen posted ones. If you don't have the time to read, you don't have the time or the tools to write, simple as that. I don't know that I've ever heard anyone disagree with that particular information. I do have to say that I think that with the appropriate attentiveness, I do think that you can learn a lot about writing from watching scripted television and movies as well. And I think that that is underrated to some people. It kind of falls into the same category as like um, comics and things. Like just some people can't wrap their head around how you might be able to learn from those things. So I would argue that scripted television and things you can learn from. Obviously, you you have to be able to sit down and read the lengths that you are expecting other people to read to be able to know what the expectations are therein and things like that. Just like you shouldn't write in a genre you've never read and things like that. It's just it's hard to get into perspective if you've never experienced it. So I do think you should be a reader. I just don't think that we can say that there's no merit in in like TV and movies and comics and graphic novels and all that jazz. So all right. We'll probably not go straight through the list. I'll probably pick and choose some, but next is you should write because you love the shape of stories and sentences and the creation of different words on a page. Writing comes from reading, and reading is the finest teacher of how to write. And it's Annie Proulx. I don't know how to say that. It's Proulx. I don't know if you say the X or if it. I don't. Y'all, I don't know. But I do think this is true, and I think that sometimes I think that we tend to talk more about the over romanticizing of writing than we do about like not allowing ourselves to romanticize it a little. I think it's useful to be allowed to be a little romantic and be a little sentimental and things with your writing. I think that's important to connecting with it emotionally, because otherwise it will feel, well, otherwise it could feel kind of stilted and cold. So I think that is true. Let's see here. Indeed, learning to write may be part of learning to read. For all I know, writing comes out of a superior devotion to reading. Eudora Welty. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know anybody who doesn't have some sort of relationship with reading who is a writer. I don't know why you would desire to be a writer if you didn't have some sort of relationship with reading. That feels like that wouldn't be terribly useful. Hey, Eva. Happy Friday. Yeah, I'm not quite sure where everybody is, so we may end up with more people here. But for tonight, the plan was to go over and talk about these writing quotes, or some of them, because it's a huge list. But nobody else is here, so I'm kind of just chatting with myself as of right now. So if you have input, by all means, please feel free. Mr. Crowley just showed up, and he is an odd duck. So yeah, we got to learning to write may be part of learning to read. For all I know, writing comes out of a superior devotion to reading. I do think that a lot of the people I know who are writers started writing to emulate reading that they admired. I think that's pretty common, especially when people are young. Hey, buddy. And they're just starting to learn, like, what they want to do. Yeah, like, I think that it seems like that would be a weird choice. Like, why wouldn't you do something else that captivated you? I don't know. I've met at least one author at a con who definitely started to write because it was an art they thought they could muster well enough to get rich. Yeah, I'm sure that went exactly as well as they expected it to. I bet you that was their top thing. Oh shit, you know what I did is I need to move the chat? There we go. Bloop. There we go. Chat moved. Yeah, that is a terrible idea. Don't, if you want to get rich, most arts aren't really primarily the place to get rich. You want to, like, I don't know, go back to 1985 and invest in a tech company. But yeah, most creative endeavors aren't terribly lucrative unless you have a lightning strike. And I think that's a thing that is hard for people to really comprehend, is how rare that is. Yeah, it's a wine glass, but it's ice and White Claw. So, because I'm fancy. I bought these expensive ass glasses, so I'm gonna use the fucking things. That's really what it is. Godzilla 2014. Say that everybody in phone recording Happy Kaiju United Kingdom on May 31st, 2022. Okay, that's the last advertisement I'm doing though, Godzilla. Alright, so yeah. Alright, we're gonna string through them for a little bit, but then we'll also start to skip around just because there's 150 of them. There's a link down below though if you want to get the whole list. And I've got to tweak it a little because my scroll is not exact. All right. Read everything, trash, classics, good and bad, and see how they do it. Just like a carpenter who works as an apprentice and studies the master. Read, you'll absorb it, then write. If it's good, you'll find out. If it's not, throw it out the window. William Faulkner. Yeah, I definitely agree that just because something might not be great, or might be considered not good writing or whatever, doesn't mean that you can't learn something from it. First of all, it's very easy to learn when you're pointing fingers at other people. So if you are careful about how you read bad things, if you're looking at it with the idea of, like, how would I change that to make that work? Or why doesn't that work? And things like that, I think it can be incredibly useful. And even if you read something that is technically good and you just don't enjoy it, learning from that why you don't enjoy it and things like that, as long as you are paying attention to it and trying to learn from it, I think it can be really useful. And then as far as the absorbing it, I do believe that you do absorb it. I think that some people just have a keen eye for certain things, and writing is one of those things. And there are some people who are just going to be more effective for whatever reason. But I think that's just a mystery of humanity. Eva says, I read drafts for editing, and it definitely aids in my own writing too. If you're seeing the things you'd change, then you're seeing the ways your voice would be different. And that's one of the things I notice about my writing. I talked about this last week in my editing stuff, and I hadn't really connected it this way, but when I edit a book, I'll notice that this book, my crutch word is that. Well, next book, my crutch word won't be that, because I just edited a whole book of that's. So I end up using a separate crutch word because I'm acutely aware that I leaned so heavily on that before and that it was a problem. So that is a thing that it's one of those things that you don't necessarily make that mistake, at least not right away. Yeah, and like, once you notice it and you've edited it out, you're less likely to do that again. That doesn't mean you won't pick a different word and do the same thing. It's just that you're now aware that that word is a crutch, or, that you're using it far too frequently and you start to hear it more because you're aware of it. So, yeah. Yeah, I fully believe, at least for me, there is always a crutch. It's always something. All right. Let's see. Let's see what we got here. 8 and 9. 8. Read 1,000 books and your words will flow like a river. Lisa C. I don't know. I wish that was true. I wish that nobody ran into a hard time if they read enough, but I don't know that that's necessarily true because I know some people who've had some hard writing times. I use so a lot to even found one IDK in my fast draft. Yeah, I could see myself doing something like that. You're going and you're so used to it and your fingers are just like, yeah, that works. And then number 9 is one sure window into a person's soul is his reading list. Mary B. Tabor. I don't necessarily agree with that. I think what somebody reads doesn't necessarily say a whole lot about who they are. I know tons of people who are into things I would never guess they'd be into. And I don't know. I think reading it's so easy to be eclectic in what you read that I don't think that that what they read is all that telling. I'm not sure about 8. Reading is a great tool and writing is a learned skill, but there comes a point where doing becomes the better teacher, I think. Well, and I don't think there's any point where you can like just stop taking it in. But I also don't think it's as easy as just saying, if you do this, that the words will just come. Because the words aren't necessarily the problem for some people. Some people have a problem with getting over a storyline. Some people have a problem with writing dialogue. Some people have a problem with writing characters. I just don't think it's as easy as that. I think that oversimplifies what is a much deeper problem. I think that for some people, maybe that will work, but, I don't know. Let's see here. 10. If there's a book that you want to read, but it hasn't been written yet, then you must write it, Toni Morrison. I would assume most of the people on authortube and in the authortube realm / Twitch writing realms would believe this to some extent. That's a big part of the reason a lot of people write is because the story they want isn't available to them, and so they want to make it available to them and to others who might want that same story. If they want it, then it is very unlikely they are the only one who does, because that's, there's too many humans for that to be likely. So yeah, I think that's probably one of the less controversial kind of thoughts on that. Let's see. Everybody walks past 1,000 story ideas every day. The good writers are the ones who see 5 or 6 of them. Most people don't see any. Orson Scott. I really love this. I think this really speaks to me. The idea of walking past 1,000 stories. The idea that every person has a story and every interaction has a background. And if you walk into a Walgreens and there's a lady at the front desk yelling at the cashier, there are infinite numbers of reasons that she might be behaving that way. And I think it's interesting to think of those as opportunities for stories. I think there's something very appealing to me about storyfying the world around me, I guess, for lack of a better way of putting it. But that's just it appeals to me particularly. So yeah. Let's see. We're going to skip the second Stephen King one. Maybe if he comes up again, we'll do another one. Most writers regard the truth as the most valuable possession and therefore are most economical in its use. Yeah, I suppose I don't like this angle on it. I prefer the Stephen King angle on it that is that you're always telling the truth. You're telling the truth for the story, not necessarily nonfiction, but you're telling the truth, if that makes sense. I think I identify better with that whole idea. But I understand the idea of that. I don't know. I don't agree with that. So, I think did we already have a George Orwell? I don't know. We're skipping it. Write what disturbs you, what you fear, what you have not been willing to speak about, be willing to split open. Natalie Goldberg. I agree that if you are having a response to what you're writing, your readers can have a response to what you're writing. If you're not, it is unlikely that your readers will, because it has to hit. Like, in order to hit, it has to hit. And I'm not saying you have to be in tears, but you should have a response. You should have the same kind of response you would have if you were reading that thing. I know there are plenty of readers who will just sob at a book, and there are plenty of readers who will not just sob at a book. So I don't expect someone who would never cry reading a book to cry while they're writing their book. But if there is a sad scene, you should feel sad. You might feel sad for the scene and also happy that you're writing, and all these other different layers, because it is not actually happening to you. But you should definitely feel the emotion from what you're writing, I think. All right, you have to write the book that wants to be written, and if the book will be too difficult for grown-ups, then you write it for children. Madeline Langell. Yeah. Yeah, I do. I see where that's coming from. I mean, I do think that adults sometimes have a harder time coping with things than children do. Yeah. I can see that one applying to me with poetry, maybe not so much with fiction. Which one? Yeah, children are an interesting audience. And they're less tainted, for lack of a better way of putting it. So you don't necessarily have to unteach them things to teach them things. Adults already have preconceived notions of how things work and things like that, and children don't necessarily have those. Oh, okay. Um, yeah, so I do think that for children, I think the not having to unteach them things, um, not having to direct them to, like, oh, forget what you know about the world around you, because they already think everything's magic. Like, those kinds of things that you don't have to do with a child. Let's see. Let's do some burrows. Cheat your landlord if you can and must, but do not try to shortchange the muse. It cannot be done. You can't fake quality any more than you can fake a good meal. William S. Burroughs. I'm not a huge fan of the personification of the muse. It's not my gig. I'm like, I'm not like hostile toward it. It's just not my thing. But I understand the idea here. And I will say, if I sit down to write and I'm like, oh, I'll just speed through this scene, and I know damn well I should just write the scene, it isn't gonna work right until I do it, until I do it right. I just, like, I can't cheat those kinds of things, and I can't, like, fast forward through them, if they need more than that. So, also, I'm all for cheating your landlord, because, you know. We're going to skip Rowling because it's June, so that's particularly tasteless. All right, Ursula Le Guin? Is that how you say that? As for write what you know, I was regularly told this as a beginner. I think that is a very good rule and have always obeyed it. I write about imaginary countries, alien societies, and other planets, dragons, wizards, Napa Valley 2202. And I know these things. I know them better than anybody else could possibly, so it's my duty to testify to them. Yeah, that is one of the things that I am always the most paranoid, I suppose, for lack of a better way of putting it, about, is the idea that I would possibly like misidentify, misconstrue, misrepresent something inadvertently. So I am somewhat more comfortable in a realm where that is simply impossible. You know, having a bad guy who doesn't have a set of rules that we all have to live by, especially like, it's part of the reason I like messing with lore. Things, I don't particularly like vampires, but things like how you can change, you know, what vampires respond to and things like that. I like to play with those things. But like I said, I'm not a huge fan of vampires, except in particular situations. But yeah, I do think I think it's kind of fun to be able to work in a world where you don't have to ask anybody if that's how it works, because it's on you. You're the one who decides how it works. And that can be very liberating. And even if what you write from it doesn't necessarily come out the way you want it to, I think it is super useful. What was the other thing I was just going to say? Oh, that was the other thing I wanted to mention, is that I think it's important to remember also that aside from like everything you read being a learning experience, even if you don't finish something you're writing, even if, you know, you go to write something and it just absolutely shits its pants, and you're just like, never again, it is incredibly unlikely that you haven't learned something from that. So keep that in mind, that, you know, even the worst writing experience is still a learning experience. Let's see what we got here. All right, looks like Allen Ginsberg is what I rolled. To gain your own voice, you have to forget about having it heard. Allen Ginsberg. I'm not even sure what he means by that, to be real. I suppose I don't know what it means though. Like I guess maybe it means not to focus on trying to capture with the voice, but to just develop a voice independent of what other people would think of it. Is that what we're getting at? Because I genuinely don't know. I can see it with social media too. When folks focus too much on being seen, they become a brand that isn't really them. Yeah, I mean, that makes sense, I suppose. I don't know. Maybe it's just because I don't think like that, so it just doesn't even occur to me that, like, what that means doesn't make much sense to me. Okay. What are we on here? I don't know. We'll take them both. No tears in the writer, no tears in the reader, no surprise in the writer, no surprise in the reader. We did just kind of talk about that. That if you're not feeling anything, that's probably a bad sign. PD James says it's only by writing, not dreaming about it, that we develop our own style. Yeah, one of the things that I've early on especially I struggled with was reminding myself that talking about writing is not writing. And that, like you can gain things from talking about writing. These kinds of discussions are useful. But ultimately a useful discussion does not finish a book or edit a book or publish or any of those things. So keeping in mind that you can get something out of something, but it ultimately does have to result in you having some sort of product for it to be a success for you. Yeah. So let's see. It looks like we stopped on Virginia Woolf. Literature is strewn with the wreckage of men who have minded beyond reason the opinions of others. I mean, yeah. Yeah, I mean, early literature is pretty, everything up until very recently, essentially, is very skewed. Yeah, it is written, like the opening to Star Trek. They're boldly going. But, it is strewed with the wreckage of men. We could stop it there and, like, we know about men. We know. Why do men? We don't know. All right. All right, Louis L'Amour. Start writing no matter what. The water does not flow until the faucet is turned on. I do agree with that. One of my keys to anything is just sitting in front of a blank document. Just like, psh, just let it just be blank in front of me. As one might say, I am as blank as a fart. But yeah, just like sitting in front of a blank page, staring at the blank cursor, letting the thing happen. Sometimes sitting with a pen, whatever. And sometimes it doesn't start with like a story. It just starts with like me just like writing. I don't know why I'm typing. I guess I'm just typing hoping that a story will pour out. And things like that. And I just cut that part off. This Ray Bradbury quote really speaks to me. This is essentially how I write. First find out what your hero wants, then just follow him. That is essentially how I write. I figure out what's going on, and then I just kind of follow people around and let them do what they're doing. Yeah, I mean, sometimes all you have is I think I should probably sit down and write something. And that's not the worst thing to have, to be fair. It's not. I'm not upset about it. All right, let's. Ooh, Gaiman, 41. Gaiman. Being a writer is a very peculiar sort of job. It's always you versus a blank sheet of paper or a blank screen, and quite often the blank piece of paper wins. Oh, I feel that. That really does speak to my inner asshole. Like, oh God. I can't. The number of times I've sat in front of a blank piece of paper and started writing something that was like, this is really good. And then all of a sudden it was like, except now you've walked into a corner and the only answer is if for some reason he can fly. Which, like, it's always those kinds of things where I'm just like, yeah, the only way out of this is absolutely absurd. I can't do this. So yeah, I feel that. Neil Gaiman has a lot of Reddit quotes that really kind of speak to me. He's kind of I'm not even like a huge Gaiman's writing fan. His writing's good, but like he's not like my number one, but the way he talks about writing speaks to me. Margaret Atwood, if I waited for perfection, I would never write a word. Absolutely. I agree with that 100%. Can't edit what's not written, so. So, yeah. All right. Let's see. Roll it. you can fix anything but a blank page, Nora Roberts. Yeah, that's just what I was saying. You can't edit it if it doesn't exist. All right, we're going to back up to the Steinbeck quote here. Abandon the idea that you are ever going to finish. Lose track of the 400 pages and write just one page for each day. It helps. That's when it gets finished. When you are always surprised. Then when it gets finished, you're always surprised. Yeah, I did. But yeah, so I like the idea of not looking at it as a whole while you're doing it, because it can kind of stifle some of the urgency, I think, especially if you're not the kind of person who knows, like, okay, I'm gonna write, it's gonna be about 350 pages, and it's going to start here, and it's gonna end here, and it's gonna be all these beats, and if you're not doing all that, it can be a lot less daunting to not have those page numbers and this word count hanging over your head. Get through the draft as quickly as possible, Joshua Wolfshank. I know some people don't agree with that. Some people are very critical of the idea of NaNoWriMo for that reason. They don't think that that's very useful. I think it really depends on how you write. It depends on how you edit, what editing modes you have at your disposal, those kinds of things. I think it's way more important than just how fast you write it. I think people who are critical of NaNoWriMo don't give that the credit it deserves. Hello, Laura. Thank you for coming. Eva said, I like this one. I only just finished my first ever draft last month, and it was my attempt at a fast draft. It was, yeah. I enjoy a good fast draft. A lot of very well-known writers will say that drafting quickly is useful, partly because you don't feel like it's out, like, it's not as open and out in the ether. It's very, like, now it's a closed item. Eva said, I outline, so I think for me, I get bored of the story before I finish if I don't do it quickly. Maybe, though this draft was or is not even a full nano. I think it's important to remember that NaNoWriMo isn't necessarily the threshold for a novel. Realistically, with the way the world is changing and the way the writing world is changing, I think novellas are not considered to be a negative thing as long as you're not advertising that you're giving someone 400 pages and you give them 200 and then 200 blank pages. I think most people are okay with a shorter story. Nano doesn't really do much for me other than just the commiseration, I suppose, of other authors and just that kind of thing. The relationships, the, hey, how much did you get? Let's all get a bunch today. Let's cheer each other on. That kind of stuff does work pretty well for me, but I'm not like, Nano itself isn't necessarily my number one thing. Laura said, I might try and fast draft. I've been working on my first draft for 1.5 years and I'm not making much progress. I know that can be very useful for some people, but for some people it is very, very not useful. So I think it's really important to try everything, because what works for us is different, and what works for one story might be different than what'll work for another. So I think that's important to remember too, is just like, if you're on your 5th book and you're like, this is not the way I do it. Well, it might be now, or this time it might be. It's doing what it's doing. I'm writing a middle grade, and so I knew it'd be shorter. My fast draft was 19K, and the first draft is 25K, with probably 10K added and the rest cut away. Yeah. I don't know if I could fast draft a longer piece. The story was in my head for a long time. Someday I'll try a longer one. Yeah, I don't think that the length of the story is necessarily all that big of a key, as long as you're aware of what you're doing and you're not convincing yourself it is what it isn't. Like, if you thought that what you had was, you know, could be marketed as 75,000 words for some reason, that would be a problem. But I think as long as you know what you're working with and what that entails for marketing it and selling it and things like that, I think that's more important than fitting inside some made up box. I don't know that I've ever finished anything I haven't fast drafted, to be real. And then this Douglas Adams quote is a classic and remains true both in my day job and in my writing life. I love deadlines. I like the whooshing sound they make as they fly by. Although I will say I don't think I've ever blown a writing deadline because I'm paranoid. But yeah, so. Be willing to write really bad. I agree with this. I have definitely written lines that were similar enough to, like, the line in the X-Men where Storm says, "Do you know what happens to a toad when it gets struck by lightning? The same thing that happens to everything." I've written those lines. I have absolutely written those lines, and I will not be ashamed because it took place of what it needed to be later, and right now I got to get to the next part. All right, and then I'm going to let Stephen King talk because I muted him last time we went by his name. On first drafts, it is completely raw, the sort of thing I feel free to do with the door shut. The story is undressed, standing up in nothing but its socks and undershorts. Yeah, I really do. I am a lot more self-conscious when I'm on my rough. After that, I start to get a lot more open to letting other people look at what I'm doing and talking about what I'm doing and things. But while I'm in my rough draft, I rarely speak about what I'm writing. I'll tell you that I'm writing. I might mention what genre it is. I might mention a character name. But I'm unlikely to talk about much else. And that's not like a superstitious thing. It's just that it just doesn't feel right to talk about it. It's almost like I'm telling you that my friend is pregnant. Like, no, my friend should tell you that she's pregnant, not me. Like, I feel like that about the story. Eva said, I call the first round of zero draft because no one is going to read that one. After a round of revisions is the first draft, and then the Mister gets to alpha. Gotcha. I typically don't have Travis read as like a reader. He will give me notes, but he is not. I don't think he's comfortable enough to know where that line is, partly because he does do editing for work. He does, like, he works with a publishing company. He's 1099, but he works for them. But yeah, so I mean, he works for a publishing company. So yeah, it's like a whole thing. So all right. Just write every day of your life, write intensely, then see what happens. Most of my friends who are put on that diet have very pleasant careers. It's Ray Bradbury. I do enjoy a good Bradbury. I think the problem with this in particular is that this was quoted prior to, you know, writing being what it is today. Like, that is a different era of writing we're talking about. It's like having someone talk about early Hollywood, and like comparing it to today. It's just not the same. It's a different world. The entire writing field is different. So I think that I don't think that it could even apply the same way that it applied then. So I think it's kind of hard to talk about that one. So let's see. James Baldwin. Talent is insignificant. I know a lot of talented ruins. Beyond talent lies all the usual words: discipline, love, luck, most of all endurance. Yeah. Yeah, I think talent is less than or more than insignificant, but not definitely not what everything hinges on. I mean, the most talented person in the world, if they never write anything, it doesn't matter how talented they are. Eva said, like ice cream, it gets old every day for me, but every week, sure. Yeah, I don't have a problem fundamentally with writing every day. I have a problem functionally with writing every day. But it just, I prefer if I could write every day. It just hasn't worked that way for me for quite some time. So nope, we don't let transphobic assholes on my page. Let's see. Any man who keeps working is not a failure. Look at that misogyny there. He may not be a great writer, but if he applies the old-fashioned virtues of hard, constant labor, he'll eventually make some kind of career for himself as a writer. Once again, that comes from a different world, a different writing. The universe was different. Everything was different. Like I don't know that's even fair. Let's see here what we got here. You write to communicate to the hearts and minds of others what's burning inside you, and we edit to let the fire show through the smoke. Arthur Plotnick. I like that a lot. I really, really like that. I don't even know what to say about it. Like, I just really like that. The idea of the editing letting you see like the body of what it is as opposed to the smoke. Like I really like that. Does anyone have anything to add to that? Because I got nothing. And then John Irving right down there below saying things he didn't even know he said. Half of my life is an act of revision. He meant like half of his life he's revising, but I am in a constant state of revision. Truman Capote says, I'm all for scissors. I believe more in scissors than I do in the pencil. I have literally cut up a story and reorganized it on a table. That is a thing I have done. I think it's important to allow yourself to apply any technique that works. I think it's important to not say like, oh, you can't do it that way. That's too drastic, or that's, that just isn't going to work that way. Just try things that might not, like, I'm sure that like, beat poets were told that they couldn't do it, but here we are. I can talk about them as an umbrella term. Editing feels like a puzzle for me, cutting and moving things around, pasting in new bits. Yeah, I get some of that, but I do have a moderate amount of rewriting when I'm editing. So the problem, I think, for me is that it feels like I'm turning it on and off too much, if that makes sense. Like, it feels like my writing has a toddler standing by the doorway, and that toddler is flipping the light switch. And at first I'm like, okay, get it out of your system. But then, like 30 pages in, I'm just like, okay, just fucking stop the light switch. I'll just look, whatever, please, whatever I can do to make you stop the light switch. And I think that's when I disconnect, is when I've had enough of the, like, you're going to write for 20 seconds. All right, now you're going to read and be very critical. And now you're going to write for 20 seconds. And now you're going to read and be very critical. Like, it's just, it's a lot of switching in my brain. And that's one of the problems I have with reading graphic novels and comics, is switching between the text and the pictures is hard for my brain. It makes me tired. Probably, like, I don't know, stupid or something. Not that the story need be long, but it will take a long while to make it short. Henry David Thoreau. I am a minimalist, and my minimalism really comes through during the edit, so that is true. My it depends. The books that I have out right now both are self-edit / critique readers / beta, like it went through just people. But then the book that's about to come out went through like the company, so it went through however many layers they do. So we did red lines, and then I think it goes through 2 or 3 more people before it went. And then that went out to, I believe that went to backers for a Kickstarter, and they functionally were the beta. I believe that's how they did it. But I am just a cog in that machine. It's the first thing I've ever written with any sort of outline as well, so. And it was the first thing I ever wrote with another person. It was the first thing I ever wrote in a world someone else created. It was a lot. Yes, cogging it up. Just over here being a cog. It's Cog Friday. Let's see. I would love to tell you that. I would. It could be out. I don't even know. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not even 100% sure if, like, I think I know the title, but things change. It's not that I just genuinely don't know. I don't know if we have an actual date. They seem to function kind of in the same way The Sims does, where they're like, I'll give you a date, but it's going to be like 14 days or less before it comes out. I don't know. But realistically, it could be out now. What is it? Now I remember. Let me go look. Hold on. Let me see if I can find it. Yeah, I don't. See if there's any. Nope. I don't see it here. I could message Travis and see if he knows. Although it's kind of weird to message him and say, is our book out yet? From Ann Dillard. Yes, do not hoard what seems good for later, place it in the book or for another book. Give it all, and give it now. I do like that as well. Yes, I am on a ski lift. I would not be on a ski lift in real life because I have seen Frozen, not the Disney one, and that was the worst. Okay, so proofs are being reviewed right now, so soon. There you go. There you go! There you go. I don't even have a proof. But yeah, I was gonna be like, I had it set up for the big room. But then if I just do me on screen, it covers my head with the setting there. Thank you. Thank you. I'm pretty excited about it. It's in the world of Aberrant, which is a tabletop gaming setting. Gaming system setting. System setting. Setting system. I don't know. To be real, I don't know that I've ever played Aberrant. But you don't need to play a game to know lore. So, and it was lore. So, there you go. And now there's like things based on it that are going into the lore of later, and it's weird. It's a very weird place to be. It's not a thing I thought I signed up for, but it's a thing I did. And because it's been with a company, it's been under NDA all the time, so I never knew exactly what I could say. And then every time I thought I did, then I'd say a little something, and then Travis would be like, you could say way more than that. And I was just like, I give up. I just won't talk about it till it's done. All right. A writer is someone for whom writing is more difficult than it is for other people. Thomas Mann. I wonder if I'm related to him. That could be interesting. Probably not. Yeah, that is a fair point. Most people know I have a day job, and I was talking to a company that does they're a company that works with us in advertising. We don't actually work with them yet, but so it was a sales call, and they were telling me we do this many ads and we have these pre-made ads and all this other stuff, and then they were like, and then we write up to this many ads for you, this many articles for you a year. And I was like, I don't have to write the article. That's the best news I've ever heard. This is the best thing ever. We do put higher expectations on ourselves. We're also trying to write things differently than other people are trying to write things. I mean, ultimately, what we want out of it is totally different than what most people who write things who are not writing for fiction reasons would be writing for. So, yeah. Oh, this is one of my favorites. As a writer, you should not judge, you should understand. Ernest Hemingway. I know that it is a thing I've seen on occasion people get confused about, is that just because a writer understands someone doesn't mean they necessarily agree, but they must understand them to write them. So if you have a character who is racist or sexist or phobic or whatever, you don't have to agree with them, but you do have to understand why they're that way to be able to write them correctly. Otherwise, you're just writing this hollow, I don't know, like a human body full of slurs or something, and that just doesn't give us anything. There's nothing to work with there. There's no learning there. And I think that takes away a lot. So I think it's really important that you do understand people, and that especially if they're someone you're going to be portraying more than in passing. If you're going to talk about someone who has an addiction problem or something like that, you really need to understand what they're going through, or you're going to do damage to someone who you didn't intend to do damage to. It's kind of like when you attack someone for their looks or for their identity or for something like that when you're arguing with them about an idea. Those are different things. But when you go after somebody because of their gender identity or their sexuality or their belief system or things like that, then you're actually just attacking everyone who has that same background, rather than actually going after why those ideas are wrong and bad. And I think it's important to be able to look at it from the other side, to be able to really authentically address it. And I think that a lot of the things that we grip onto as being important in literature, a lot of them are very uncomfortable. And I think the reason is that you have to have discomfort to have understanding. And I think that is another thing that people people don't listen until they're uncomfortable as much as they don't want to. But I think it's really important to be able to be uncomfortable, to learn. And I think being uncomfortable helps you to not judge, because you're feeling it differently. Let's see here. Wheelie. Either write something worth reading or do something worth writing, Benjamin Franklin. I don't disagree with that, except that I'm lazy, so I'm not going to be doing nothing. Especially not if it doesn't involve snacks. Snacks are key to most of my choices. So, yeah. In case you were wondering, I'm pro snacks. Roald Dahl. Everybody loves a good Roald Dahl. A person is a fool to become a writer. His only compensation is absolute freedom. He has no master except his own soul, and that, I am sure, is why he does it. I don't know. Am I a fool because I became a writer, or am I a writer because I'm a fool? I think that's a very deep question that was not intended from that. Yeah, it's just, I don't know. I like that. I just don't know what else to say about it, to be real. But it's 150 quotes, so we're gonna get close here. Finding something. All right. What's that? Okay. The good writing of any age has always been the product of someone's neuroses. William Styron. Yeah. I think most of us know that we're a little bit odd. Some of us are more odd than others, but I think there's always a little something going on. It makes us a little different. No matter what people tell you, words and ideas can change the world. Robin Williams. 100% agree. I think that it's important that we don't pretend that words aren't important. I think minimizing that can be really detrimental, especially when we think about the damage that it does in the long term of like overly negative and things like that. But yeah. One more roll and then we'll call it a night, I think. All right, so let's roll. Boop. What do we got here? Kurt Vonnegut, I guess. Here is a lesson in creative writing. First rule, do not use semicolons. All they do is show you've been to college. Kurt Vonnegut. Yeah, I think there is a little bit of a tweak I'd make there is that they also might show that you are an old millennial or a late Gen Xer who was early on texting, because semicolons used to be like the biz when you were texting. I very rarely use them in like writing. The only time I would use them in writing would be if it was a very specific point I was making with them. It wouldn't be something I would use in fiction particularly. But yeah. Yeah. But also I do like a good poke at education. Because, I'm pro-education. I just think it's funny. So. All right. So I think that is going to do it for tonight. I can't believe I managed to do 70 minutes, to be real, because I planned on there being people on screen with me and stuff, and I don't know. But I'm glad I made it, and I'm glad you guys were here, and I appreciate you being here, and I'm sorry that I am, just sitting here drinking a White Claw out of a wine glass, chit-chatting, and I didn't have anything else. My plan was to bounce ideas off people, though, so I'm not a total jackass. My plan did not work out as I had intended. So, I'm sorry, and I love you, and I'm sorry, and I love you. Anyway, but I'll see you guys all next Friday night. Maybe other people will be here. I'm going to call CJ now and see if she slept through stream. I might talk about it on Twitter if she did. So if you're not following me on Twitter, go down to my link tree and follow me, because I will talk straight shit about CJ all over the Twitter if she slept through my stream. So, all right. I'll see you guys all next week. Bye.